Hi everyone, this is Josh, and if you're seeing this, that means you bought my release on Beatport, so thank you very much. This is a masterclass on how I made the tune. So in this session, I'm going to do a deep dive, an uncut deep dive of everything that went into it. So if we dive straight into the project here, I'm still running Ableton 10 for no particular reason other than I haven't paid for the upgrade yet. As you can see, there's a lot of mess going on here, and this is kind of the way I work. I don't really tend to organise things, I just kind of tend to throw as much stuff at the wall and then remove. As you can see, we've got quite a lot of layers. 105, I've had tunes with bigger, I've had tunes with a lot smaller. I don't really have a rule of thumb. I just add and then take away as I see fit. And yeah, I think this track sounds pretty big. So let's just have a little run through. I'll play the extended mix first. Okay, so let's start with the extended intro. I feel like a lot of producers miss this, but when you're making an extended mix, you want to give it enough character so that when a DJ is mixing it in, you can identify the tune, but it can't be too chaotic. You need that kick in a bit of the bass to blend it in. Think about it from a DJ perspective when you're making an extended mix. If you're mixing a track, you usually bring in the kick with no bass and then swap the basses out. So I'm kind of wanting this track to be as DJ friendly as possible. I want it to basically mix itself. So in order to do that, in this intro part here, if I scroll up to my basses, we have my 3 main basses from the drop, but I've just got the on-beat notes here. I've just took the simple notes because, like I say, when I'm mixing it in, I don't want the notes to be all over the place. I don't want the bass to be too jumpy for the DJ. I want it to be a solid, pretty much just like a limited note to what the speakers can produce. So that's the thought process here. If we go in, so I've got these basses in a group. So we've got, I'll go through them individually. We have 3 layers. This one here is, I believe, the sub bass. Most of these sounds will be either from Splice or from my sample pack on Glitch Tones. So this is a sub that I've used. As you can see, when I've designed it, the randomness in the phase is 0. When it's a sub, we'll want no phase and we'll want it to be direct. We'll want it in mono. We want it to hit you right in the face. So that's what this one's designed. We've got some macros here, which I've tweaked a little bit. Some heat, which is just a little bit of saturation. We've also got like the ability to give it a little bit of phase distortion, which is basically FM. Just adds a bit of character, but I didn't really use that too much. I just wanted a really plain, saturated drive and sub to like really move a club. So yeah, as you can see here, nothing too special going on. What I've then done is I've added a little bit of white noise just for a bit of texture, an amp just for a bit more texture. As you can see, it's in mono. I've done a lot of weird EQing because, like I say, we're just kind of wanting that to be directly in the frequencies we need. And then this is one thing that I do, which I know a lot of producers can be a bit controversial on, but I absolutely slam it into a limiter. So basically, my theory on doing this is I don't want my sub bass to have dynamics, too much dynamics. I want every note to feel like it hits with the same sort of power in the very low end, because especially if we're jumping between notes, like an F, for example. So let's just play an F there, and let's play like a C sharp. When they've been limited really heavily, they've still got the same sort of power. So if I disable the limiter, I'll go a bit lower. It's probably a bit too low. Especially if we're jumping between octaves and pitching around. I've got a master chain on right now, so it's not as in your face, but that is one thing that I always look out for, is trying to reduce the dynamics in that range and give a lot of the space to the other elements for all the dynamic range. So yeah, we have that, and we also have a one top layer here. That's what this one sounds like. This has been filtered in. as this is the intro bit. We're just using a filter for that. I'll play it in the drop so we'll get there. That's just a really noisy layer. This is probably, yeah, this is from Splice. There's a lot going on in this patch, but basically I'm just using the noise of it. We can see here I've just cut off the sub, don't need that as we've got it in our separate bit. I think I've done a bit of stereo widening here with Imager and this saturation, Ableton stock saturator, a bit warmer preset. Put that in anything, mix the dry wet in a little bit, and it brings so much character to your sound, it's crazy. And then while we're on the bass layers, we'll quickly have a look at this one. I believe this is the main. Yeah, it's some sort of like harmonic bass. This is from the Cymatics Henry Fong pack. Basically what's going on here, it's just a simple bit of FM. We're using the harmonics from the sines. It's being blasted through some effects. I've turned off the flange filter there just for a bit of, just to make it my own. I'll probably adjusted the rate and the cutoff a little bit. And the processing, very, very simple. I've just removed a bit of sub, a little bit of mid and a little bit of highs, and then all together in the drop. It's a pretty heavy, gritty bass. So back to the intro. The way it's fading in is pretty simple. We're just cutting the highs and cutting a bit of the lows, just so it blends in nicely. I've just used Ableton's auto filter for this. I don't want too much to leak through, but I want enough to drive the track with the kick. So we'll play the kick, which is up here. So with your kick and your bass, you always want that to be the center of the track, and I think in this track that is the most prominent element, is just the kick and bass relationship. So yeah, if we play this, if you're a DJ fading that in, it's doing a lot of the work for you. Earlier on we've got all the sub cut, so it's rolling in. Then this would usually be where you would do your hard cut, and that's it there, built into the track. So it's just a little bit less work for the DJ. We just want this, you always want your music to be as supportable as possible in this sort of lane. So that's the thought process there. And that kind of follows for the rest of the elements in the intro. In the extended mix, we have the stab from the drop, and that's been faded in with the same sort of idea, like reverb and filter, just to bring it in. So it's kind of mixing itself in as it goes through. So you want to pick little elements from your drop and from your tune, which are pretty iconic with the track. So when it's been mixed in, people will instantly go, yeah, that's what's mixing in. There's nothing better than when you're in a crowd and you already know what the next tune being mixed in is, and little things like this help. I've got some extra rhythm elements which come in. There's nothing too crazy going on in this part. So that's the lead being filtered in there, with the exact same sort of idea, but we'll get into that bit a little bit later. Some more pad little effects. What do we have here? This is a little vocal atmos which I made from a Cashmere sample, and that's like a backbone of like a lot of atmosphere in this. So that just rolls really nicely throughout like bits of the track. You can see it in the break over here, in the build. Just felt natural to put there. Atmos, a little percussion loop. I use a lot of transition sweeps as well. They don't have to be anything intense. This track I used these really cool layers, breathy loops. And we're even following that same technique there where we're fading it in this extended mix. We've got some cool stuff with Portal going on, just to wash it around a bit. Some frequency shifting, which will be automated throughout the track, I assume. Yep. Some flanger from this Ableton plugin, which I've forgotten. It's a frequency shifter as well. Yep. I'm using the wide on that and just spreading it out a little bit. So it's acting as a flanger and also just giving her a little bit more character. Because let's face it, everyone's using these Cashmere loops because they're great. So why not add your own little flair and little texture? So as soon as we're extended bits done, we'll go straight into the intro. So as soon as the tune's mixed in, and this would be where the radio edit starts, I want people to instantly be like, yeah, this is a Jøsh tune. So if you're a producer, make sure, like, while you're building your signature sound, build yourself a little sample pack. It doesn't even have to be sounds you've created from scratch, just sounds that fit in your universe. Just make a little folder of them. I've personally made my own sample pack with glitch tones, and I use a lot of the stuff from that, and you guys can use it as well. It's up on glitchtones.com. I'll leave a link below. But I've got little bass shots from some of my tracks. So that one you can instantly recognise from my track Eros. Little bits and pieces, like some vox shots. That was from Afraid. Little things like that you can mix in just to really make the tune feel like you. But as soon as this comes in, I want it to impact and be like, okay, we're in this world now. So to start with, I've pretty much just got... I've got this vocal which runs throughout. It's like a little theme. Again, this was a splice vocal, so I spent a lot of time just kind of messing with it and adding my own flair of character to it. There's a lot of... If I group this now and I can show everyone what it sounds like without any effects. And as well, you don't always need to do this. This was just something that I felt like if I wanted to bring it in and use it the right way, I kind of had to layer it with my sound, so... I've not really changed it too much. I've just gave it a new tone. We've just got a little altar boy, which you'll see a lot in this track, and a lot of my productions. Run it through an amp. I'll be doing a bit of EQ on it. Just, yeah, remove a bit of the lows, boost a bit of the mids, duck a bit of the highs. Just really carving the mix out as I'm going. Portal. This will be automated, I'm assuming. It's a portal that's not doing anything. Cutting a bit more mold and just getting it dialed in with EQ, a bit of basic delay, a bit of reverb, and then these are side chains. So I'll have a break kick usually, and I'll also have a drop kick. I know a lot of people try and keep them the same, but in terms of this track especially, it's all very stylized, and the kick on the drop had to be very heavy and almost a bit of like a techno touch. And in the break, I wanted it to be soft and a bit filtered here and there, a bit hip hop in places. So yeah, that's always an idea, is just you can set up 2 side chains, simple as. What else have we got going on here? Again, a lot of impacts, a lot of sweeps. I always want my tracks to feel like they're moving, which is quite hard when you're going for like quite a choppy electro sound. So I use a lot of breathing sounds and a lot of vocal sounds, a lot of washed out filters and reverbs and granular synthesis, just to make it all feel like it's moving together. Let's have a little look at some of the sounds we're using here. So I'm layering these. Some cool little vocal shots. Some more vocal shots. That one's not even... that's a sound that's not even being used. That's how you know this is the real project. I love this gritty bass sample that I found. It adds so much texture on top of that. It really cuts through. It just helps. What else have we got? We've not got too much going on in this project, which is... There's a lot of controlled elements to make it all sound chaotic. Because the more you add, the more you can take away. And then you're left with the bare bones of what really, really makes the track, which is a lot of the way that I work. So if we move on into the more break section, we've got some cool drums going. I've got these grouped. I think I added some, yeah, just for a bit of colour. So those drums really smack hard. We've got some layers of snares. This one's a serum one. This is a preset that I adjusted loads, just to give it that like synthy sort of knock. We've got this cool snare sample, which I put in mono. I do a lot of like stereo imaging and placement when I'm doing my mix sounds. This rolling sort of snare, got a bit of down sample on that. This chopped up breakbeat, running that through a little bit of effects, but nothing major. A really heavy stomp kick. That's got a lot of character, and a lot of these drums and a lot of these impacts all sound a bit blown out and like very compressed with that like high frequency touch, just to really cut through the mix no matter what we're listening to it on. Because although we want our music to be played like on the big stage at Tomorrowland, a lot of people are going to be listening to it on an iPhone, in some AirPods, on an Alexa speaker, so we've got to make sure that every element that we have, it's serving its purpose and it cuts across all platforms. It's the way it works. So yeah, we've got this respace. We're not doing anything too fancy. We're just playing a very simple major progression. We don't have any chords in this track, so the respace doesn't need to be all too melodic, but we don't want it just stuck on one note all the time, because if it's on, we can have it on one note for a lot of it, but if it's not moving at all, you don't get the effect of the tension that it's creating. So let's have a little dive into this preset. This is something that I made for my pack. We've got the solar waves, and this might look a little bit different, but all I've done is I've removed the fundamentals. The original wavetable is no longer there as it's been flattened, but we've removed the fundamentals just for the phasing. That allows us to have space for a clean sub. And with a clean sub, that means that we can keep it directly in the middle and directly mono. Reese is a bit like a techno rumble, it's all phase. There's nothing particularly centered about it. So we're getting a lot of really cool stereo information in your low mids, but we don't want that in the sub. We always want to keep the sub as clean as possible to really, really cut through and give it that punch that we need. So yeah, we've got some cool stuff going on in the effects. When I designed this preset, I used a multiband again to control the lows, a little bit similar with my sub theory, but obviously not as heavy. Is keep those lows controlled. We don't want too much of a jump every time we change notes. It's just going to feel a little bit unnatural, and if we are lucky enough to get this played on a big system, you'll feel the difference. So that's something that I'm always keeping in mind. And then we're mids in here, we're doing a bit of widening because this is a respace. We want that big phasey mess, so that's what we're doing here. Just with the chorus, the flanger, a bit of distortion, and then finally we're just gluing it together with a hard clip and a compressor. As simple as. You don't need to always overcomplicate every sound, but as long as it fits in the mix, you can build around it, and that's where you can build your world from. So we've done a little bit of EQ in here. I've just boosted the sub a little bit, done a tiny dip there around like 150 hertz, and then boosted that notch. To be honest, that EQ is more for colour. I feel like it was pretty well mixed out the box, which is nice. It's what we always try to do when we're designing presets. If you've got a good preset, it should always sound almost fully usable out the box. So yeah. One thing that's also cool to show off is some failed ideas that I had. So like I said before, I didn't have any chords or counter melody, particularly in this break. It's a lot of vocal effects and drums and little chops. So this is a idea that I tried and it clearly didn't work, but let's have a listen. It's super basic, and obviously that's probably why I didn't use it. But if we have a look, like I've just taken a very simple lead preset, thrown it through some isotope vinyl to try and maybe fit the color, because sometimes like with a lot of world building sort of ideas, the melody is something that comes as I'm designing the sound. So I was probably designing the sound and realized early on this wasn't the one, so I cleared it off. But yeah, what else do we have going on this break? We don't have too much going on because, like I say, this is a very short track as well. So I'm doing a lot of momentum building, trying to get the momentum built as quick as possible to take you straight into that drop. So the build up, pretty simple. There's a lot going on, but once it's broken down, there's nothing particularly crazy going on. We've got this sample from a sample pack, a big techno horn. We've got this war horn here from Kashmir. We'll layer that together. Sounds pretty cool. I'm obsessed with like cinematic sounds, so like trying to get them in where I can, and they bring a lot of movement. I don't use them so much for like the organic touch, but I use them a lot for like just really like throwing atmosphere, like throwing you into the atmosphere. Really like, it's like, okay, this is happening now. So we've got those breath loops again. They add a little bit of tension. We've still got this vocal going in, being form and shifted. We've got a bit of automation with reverb. That's another theme throughout the track, which we'll get to in the drop. I'm super excited to show that. Some simple atmospheres. These are just from sample packs that I've collected over the years. They're all layered. They've all been pitched in the right key. A lot of them you won't hear, like if they were removed, particularly, but you'd feel if they were like, if they'd been removed. When I'm layering, I'm trying not to stack loads and loads for them all to be heard. I'm almost doing sound design with them. So yeah, like I want them to, when they're layered, feel like one sound, not 3 or 4 different rises, pan left, right, doing loads of crazy shit. We want them all like, we want it to feel like one sound. So yeah, that's another thing to think about when you're doing a lot of layering is, why am I layering? Like, am I layering just so that I can show off that I've got like 20 different rises? If you're doing that, then there's something, it's time to close the project for the day. I'm guilty of it myself, but yeah. Let's have a look. We've got the respace, which is rising. We're doing some automation with the macros. And also it's fun to note that I've got the same compressor setup that I mentioned earlier for the sidechain. We're just pitching up 12 semitones, playing the root note. Some build-up snares. You can see here I trial a lot of things and just turn them off. I obviously felt like the snare needed to be there. We've done a cool bit of process on this one. I believe this was a one shot. Yeah, that I've consolidated. So we've got some cool frequency shifting going on. I have this bit reduction, but the reason it's in an audio effect rack is just because there's no dry wet mix. So I'm basically blending in, almost as if it's like a bus but on the channel. I'm not too big on doing things like this. I like a dry wet just for the ease. But yeah, in this occasion this worked. OCT, cutting the lows, and then yeah, putting it in a group just to mix it in. We've also got another snare loop. This is just a really simple sample. There's not a lot going on here. We're blending it in a little bit. This is almost the same sort of theory sometimes when I'm bringing in new sounds as the extended mix, where I want them to pull themselves in and be mixed in. That's just kind of maybe the DJ part in me. When I'm doing these mix sounds, I approach them almost as if it's like a DJ mix sometimes, because studio mixing can be quite overwhelming. So if I like everything to move, I don't like things to feel like I've just chucked a sample in there for the sake of it. Doesn't always need to be like that, but a lot of the time I'm always thinking about movement, keeping the track flowing, keeping it flowing, push, pull, tension. Like, a lot of those things are like overlooked a lot, and I listen back to some of my earlier tunes and I think like, oh man, if I just brought the elements in a different way, they would have hit in like such a different, but hey, it's part of the process, man. What else have we got going on here? So this granular vocal that I use, the fade in. I'm a big fan of this high cut, low cut, like fade in. This sample doesn't have any processing on it and it sounds great. I've probably pitched it. No, I haven't. So there you go. Keep an eye out on Splice for like genre crossing samples. This is a garage vocal. Has no business at all being in a main stage, big room, EDM, whatever you want to call this genre. Okay, so now let's get on to probably why you bought the extended mix to get the Masterclass, this lead. This was a nightmare. This lead was a nightmare. I had so much fun making this track, but I did not enjoy this lead. It had my life for about a month. So let's have a listen to it. It had so many layers, and then it had hardly any, and then it had so many, and then it was playing loads of notes, and then it was playing one, and then it was playing two, and then it was doing loads of form and shift, and then it wasn't, then I was doing stereo. It ended up only playing 2 notes. The drop melody plays 2 notes. How crazy. So let's just play the lead by itself. And without the bass, it sounds quite thin. So a lot of the battles that I have when I'm making these leads is trying to make them sound really, really like full. But in this tune, the lead's job, I figured out while doing it, was to see how the bass transforms it. It's gone from a really skinny thin sound to feeling like one big massive gelled production. So a lot of the times you want your bass to maybe be doing different grooves to your lead, but in this case, a very syncopated da 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 with the bass really glued it. It brought the whole thing together once I realized, okay, these need to be acting as one. So if we dive into the lead, let's just play the two main layers. So we've got this synth shot. We're doing a lot of stuff with Little Alter Boy, a lot of formant automation. I do this a lot. This has kind of become my signature sound over the years. But with Little Alter Boy, you always have to remember it does a lot of weird stuff with the phase. That's a whole separate video in itself. If you want to know like more about how I approach like mix downs in terms of phase wise and stuff, drop a comment and I'll answer it, or you can make a video on it. So yeah, this is the lower layer. Yeah, so it's just been pitched down 12 semitones. We'll just run it through an amp. Just kind of want it to feel really blown out and really like crunchy. The bass is doing all that lower drive, and so bang, get rid of it. And the high end's being done by the top layer. So this is just kind of fill it out and just to give it a little bit of mid, like almost a bit of like grit in the middle. I think we've got some. Yeah, I've pulled on the stereo on that because, like I say, we're in the mid range. There's a lot of stereo going on in this drop, so that's just kind of just to help the weight cut through a little bit more on like other systems. The main layer, it's the same, just pitched up. With formant, we'll be doing the same. Yeah, it's doing the exact same automation. And then we have this transient layer, which is just a percussion, I think. Synth percussion. Bit of saturation, dipping out the frequencies we don't need. And then we're grouping it together, and the reverb is what brings this track together. So you'll always hear a lot of the very swoopy sort of reverb automations, which almost sound like sidechain movement in my tracks. I just use this vintage verb stock. It's the default sound. I've not even done any low cut on this because I'm doing the low cut with an EQ. We're automating the mix, so I want it to really like throw itself into the next bit, like just. It just helps with like the momentum, helps bring it into the next note, and in a crowd, like you can just imagine people just swinging their arms about. So always think about the dance floor as well when you're making music like this. Like I'm trying to make something unique here, but I'm also thinking like if this does get played, how do I want people to dance? And yeah, this one I think it's pretty obvious that hopefully people will be losing the shit when this drops. So yeah. I learned this technique from a Seth Hill's masterclass, and it's just adding a bit of tremolo on your reverb automations, just to give it a bit more texture and a bit more transient. We've also got this little top layer. I think it's a hi-hat. There's some sort of like weird like percussion layered in. The drop stabs, this is something that I battle with on every single track, is making a cool stack for my drop stab. I feel like adding as much character into this as possible is kind of like what can make or break your drop. We all know the famous Seth Hill's disco stab, so I always try and stay away from that, but we've also got to remember that we've kind of got to have something. I don't particularly want to be using the big room brass stabs, so I try and build a stack that sounds unique, but also like those stabs have been used for one reason only. It's because they're good and it works. So let's have a little look through this layering that I've got. We've got a white noise one, a bass shot from a sample pack. Oh no, sorry, from a Cashmere pack. A one from my pack. A Cashmere synth shot. And the one from Kura. we're not doing any processing particularly now. We're doing it all as a group. So the first thing I'm doing is saturating it all, trying to bring it together. Saturation can also, like, it's always overlooked for gluing things together. So I used the M saturator in this one. It's not something I usually use, but I just reached for it this one time and it worked. OTT, bit of compression, decapitator for a bit of colour. I'm driving this pretty hard actually. Gives it a good bit of crunch. Automation on the reverb. So I've got that swell again. Just to really, like, I'm almost copying what I'm seeing in this audio here. Just the almost the suction to pull you into the drop. That's what, like, the stab's purpose is to pull you in, instant burst of energy, and then release into your melody and all the chaos you've got to come. I'm not even doing any EQ on this. We have this filter which was being automated over here in the extended mix. When it comes to Yeah Candy in a drop, I am so bad at throwing too much stuff in, and I spend a lot of time taking it all out. So here's the stuff that remained. We have some little percussion shots. And I think that is all that remained. And I can guarantee you, at one point, there was probably about 20 to 30 sounds going on, flying about. And when I've come to the mix down, it's just caused too much carnage. So I've had to remove elements. The B part of this drop's pretty interesting. I would usually use a serum to make some sort of Reese Neuro sort of sound. But I ended up manipulating a sample, which is something that I don't often do for these sorts of basses, just because I want as much control as possible. But this case, it just worked. So yeah, it's an absolutely nuts sound. Let's play it without any processing. Let's even transpose it. So this is what it sounds like on Splice. So I pitched it into my flute. I've obviously chopped bits. And then if we turn the rack on, the majority of it's coming from Little Altar Boy. We've pitched it up again. This probably wasn't quite hitting the right key. I've pitched it up again. Oh, sorry. So Little Altar Boy, when you're pitching it up, this is something that took me a while to really get my head around, is the robot function. When the pitch is set to 1, that is C, that is C sharp, and then that is D. The track is in D major, so I pitched it up 2. Yeah, we've got a bit of drive going on. The formant shifting is what's really, really doing this. So if I was to set it to its right pitch and change it to, it's not got the character we need. That's got our electro sort of like swing that we're after. Just a bit of EQ. When I'm doing my EQs, a lot of the time I'm not necessarily so much focused on my first EQ being my mixing EQ. I usually colour it and bring out the character that I want to, and then if there's any problems, I'll add another EQ, a more surgical EQ. I once heard a quote like, sound design like you're drunk and then mix like you're high. Let all your creative juices out while it's going. You can do EQs and compressors and weird chains that don't make sense, and then be very surgical about your mix downs. Yeah, it's two completely separate parts of the production process, so keep that in mind. And then I've done a little bit of ozone imaging. I've done a bit of limit in there, just to control the transients. A bit of reverb afterwards, which looking back I would have put beforehand, but ayo. So yeah, that's the drop. If we go over to the drums are really, really simple again. Oh, sorry, we also have, in my sidechain group, some percussions. These are part of my Yeah Candy. They're just buried really deep in the mix just for a bit of momentum. I could have had those not sidechain and part of the drums, but I felt like the pumping on them just helped with that groove that we're trying to build. So yeah, That's why they're there. Claps, just 2 layers. I spend a lot of time when it comes to the claps. I always try and pick 2 layers, or quite a few layers sometimes, and just really like build it in, because like your kick and your clap and your snare, like those are like they add a lot of character, and especially in the extended mixes, those are kind of the first things that like the crowd will hear, and the DJ playing it will hear. So if they don't have the power they need, no one's gonna play it, no one's gonna listen to it. And I think a lot of your drum selection needs to be really, really, really dialed, especially nowadays. So we've got this Diablo plugin. We're just clipping it quite heavily. Adding a bit of punch on this one, and then we're distorting it with a hard clip, just to really like chop off the top of that transient, just so that it punches hard clip. And we don't want the transient to really be stabbing with limiter too much, because it's going to cause a lot of hell when it comes to mastering. We've got this kick, it's a Volar kick. I try not to do too much mixing and processing on the kick. I try and pick a great sample straight out the door, just because you never know what you're doing with the phase. I've just done a little roll off on the sub bit, and I probably just added a bit of clipping with Diablo. We've got a hi-hat coming in later on, and some more top loops. I've panned these left and right, and a middle one. That's probably, and then just a hi-hat to drive it. And then together, we've got some pretty heavy thumping drums, which carries the track along. We've done some automation here. That's because I had sounds coming in. I've just automated the kick return off just so the sidechain still runs. And another thing which I'll quickly touch on is my mid-fill. In my tracks, the mid-fill between the first part of the drop and the second part of the drop, I like to have a lot of fun. I like to remove the kick and go crazy with fills, and sometimes add sounds from the breaks just to glue the track together. So we'll have this vocal chop shop. There's a lot of like automation-y stuff going on here. We'll have this UK bassy sound, which is mint. A fill that I've just spliced together with 2 fill samples. That's got a lot of automation going on, but a lot of it is basically just to make it move. I'm sorry, that was for the bass. And then I introduce what is going to be the main part of the second part of the track, this vocal chop. And again, we're doing a lot of movement with this, which I'll get into more of my process for that when we get into the break. So straight after the drop, we've got our little bridge part. And this is where like we want the energy to, we want to give the crowd a little breather, but also build up. We've not got a lot of time to build up the tension into this break, and this is a high energy break. A lot of the times I'll use a lot of strings and a lot of chords and cinematic elements just to really breathe and let yourself go in the crowd. But this time, we're keeping that energy, we're keeping that pace going, we're keeping the momentum. So I'm using a lot of impacts again. We've got this air lock, which is really cool. I'm really into these like mechanical industrial sounds, like everything that's like clean and quite compressed at the moment. I seem to be gravitating towards. A sub drop, again, you'll see a lot on my sounds that I haven't necessarily grouped, that I've got the sidechain compressors on. I'm always wanting to make sure that my low end's as clean as possible. I don't like an over sidechain sound. If you listen to my records, I don't use as much like sidechain as what you might hear in other people from the genre. I like to make sure that it's tidy but not got that big room sidechain effect. It's more like a stylistic choice from me. As long as it's clean and it's not causing any harm, then great. But I don't know, I like to just keep it clean, keep it going. I feel like the big room sidechain's very, it feels too big room. I want my tracks to feel as modern as possible. But yeah, that's just a stylistic choice for me. Feel free to experiment with your sidechains. So this is a little bridge part. Oh. We're introducing that vocal chop. And it's all rushing and swirling, and pulling in. It's just a lot of automation again. We're automating performance on this, and that's deep in the background. We've got a church bell coming, just to hint that like we've kind of gone like a weird like churchy sort of theme in the break, which is cool. I've not really heard that before in this style, so that like mixes in nicely with that. Always try and keep your themes running as much as you can. It just makes for a cooler record, in my opinion. What else do we have here? We've just got a cut from that vocal. That one that was turned off earlier is playing in the break. You'll notice a lot of repeating elements. We've got the hi-hat running from the drums. We have worry space coming back. That vocal chop from earlier. All those impacts from earlier. We've got this cool little serum synth, which is playing just in the background. A lot of tension. It's been granularized. Let's have a quick dive into the sound. This was just a serum preset from my pack. It's just like a tension. I'm just trying to build tension here. We've got the phase. We've got the phase being constantly like the random position and the phase of it being moved around with this LFO. It just adds a bit of detune. What else do we have going on here? We've got the filter just to plug it in. We've got some basic effects chain, and then we're running it into a portal with a preset open rotation, which is like a delay granular sort of effect. Into a Pro Q3, we're removing the lows. We don't need that. We've got our respace and all the drums, and this would have been a resonance, I'm assuming. Yeah, that's something that I just didn't want in, so don't need it, get rid of it. So then we'll go on to the vocal. This is a splice vocal, and like a lot of you guys out there, I'm using a lot of stuff off Splice, and when I'm thinking about this, I'm also thinking about how can I use it in my way. Does it make sense? Have I heard it before? And if I have, that's not so much a problem, because all the good stuff's been used on Splice. Let's be honest, that's why you shot my glitch tones. But it's all been used. So what I do is I just make sure that it fits what I'm doing. There's nothing particularly unique about this vocal, but the way it's been used is I've done a bit of automation with Little Altar Boy, a bit of pitch correction, but this is a spoken vocal, so it doesn't particularly have a tone or a key. I'm just trying to like artificially add that a little bit of flanger going on there, a bit of downsampling going on, which is just like being automated towards the end, I believe, like in the build. Yeah, just to make that riser and just washing it out. That's where a lot of the automation's going on. The vocal sounded great. As soon as I added it in, that was when I knew, like, okay, we're on to something here. It gave that like Steve Angelo Dimmac sort of vibes. And yeah, that's pretty much all that's going on. I'm just recycling a lot of the elements from the first part to create something completely new. If you can recycle as much of your own stuff as possible, you're going to really build that world. Something I'm really, really big on. It's just trying to make it all fit together. The sounds you use will do a lot of the work for you. So yeah. And then the main part, this vocal. I didn't change the sample too much. I just made sure it's playing a major, because it's a minor sample. Bit of ring modulator. Adding a lot of grit to that top layer. I'm probably clipping it. I'm just adding a bit of overdrive. Shaping it with an EQ, bit of reverb. Very, very lightly adding some sidechain. Very lightly. It doesn't particularly need it. The kick's quite low in the back, but it's just there, just to give it a little, that top end, a little bit of movement. And it also helps when I'm coming to mastering it, because this is a particularly loud part of the track, a bit like my drop. So I wanted it all to be leveled out as best I can for the mastering process. And then in the second drop, the only difference that we have really is the melody variation. The one note change happens throughout the drop rather than just the second part. The drums come in a different way. So we've only got the kick clap for the first few bars. And then the hi-hats come in. And I've also changed all the microfills around. There's a bit more Yeah Candy going on. But I felt that this track, there's so much going on. It's so fast with all the things moving, all the parts moving. To change the track again, it just felt a bit silly to me. I do that a lot sometimes, but in this one, I didn't feel the need, so I didn't. We've got this cool section here. There's the signature sound laugh, and that's a sample that I use in every single production that I do. It's just a little bit of fun. I try and use it in different ways. Some rises going on in the drops, and yeah, that's the tune. This one took me so long to produce. There were so many elements that I removed, and to see it in this form now is quite funny when I think about all the different layers that I chucked at this just to remove. But that's the process, that's what we do. I'll quickly go over the mastering chain. It is nothing particularly exciting, and this is just the way that I mastered this one. I tend to kind of keep the same sort of format, but if you're a mastering engineer at this, like out there watching this, you'll probably hate us, but this is the way I've done it. I've got this local automation happening in the build. I also took the volume a little bit, which you probably shouldn't do, but that's kind of what I do, just to give it that impact when the drop hits. I use this Analog Obsessions compressor. It's free. We're really just very lightly tickling the track here. OTT 3%. It just adds a little bit of colour. I'm doing a very small bit of saturation, a 20-20 cut. So I'm cutting a 20 and then 20k. I boosted the mid-range a very small amount. I do some compression that's focusing on the attack, some compression that's focusing on the release, but I'm doing that very lightly again because we've done a lot of word transient control and a lot of dynamic control in the mix already, so I'm trying not to touch that too heavily. This is something interesting that I'm trying to do a lot. I try to do it a lot in the mix, but in the master I add it a little bit as well as stereo control. So when the drop hits, I want it to feel wide and really powerful, and the build up, I want the tension, I want everything to be to feel like it's being pulled away from you. So one way I've done that is by driving back the stereo and then bringing it back on the drop. So we're just pulling that down, we're just pulling it down a little bit. We're not making it fully mono, and then we give it back. It makes it feel so much more powerful, man. I'm so happy with the way this one's turned out. This track's quite dirty, so I'm shaving off quite a heavy amount here. Yeah, just to make the limiter's job easier, just so we can really get the loudness out of this. We're wanting this one on the main stage, we're wanting it to be as loud as humanly possible, without sacrificing too much. I think we've got a pretty loud mix. Yeah, we're about -7, -6, -7. So I'm pretty happy with that. The dynamics still sound good. The bass is still punching. My drums are still hitting. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way this turned out. In the extended bit, it's the same process as the intro, but just reversed. I just want it to be an easy process to mix out of. A lot of effects to wash it through. And yeah. And one last tip before I go is put your extended mix in your radio edit in the same project. Just copy it over, and then it's sorted. Then you don't every adjustment you make mix wise is being made on both of them. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed this masterclass. I've really enjoyed making this tune and making this for you, and thank you so much for downloading my tune on Beatport. It's the best way to support me as an artist. Everything I do here, everything I put out, it's all fully done by me. It's my record label, it's my money. Everything, yeah, everything's all been done by me. So really, really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed the tune. This has been Josh, and thank you so much for tuning in. Much love.